Hello, welcome to Lovin Sheila, the podcast. Today we have a special guest, Baucom, PhD. He's the creator of the Saved Marriage System used around the world for over 2 decades. He is the author of 4 books on relationship issues and marriage recovery. As a relationship coach, Lee works with couples around the world to restore their intimate relations, even when one partner has given up. His method proved useful for people working on their own to turn their marriages and committed relationships around into loving, thriving, connected relationships. He shares that approach in his system, in his writing, and in his podcast. He has been podcasting for 13 years. He is married. He has 2 adult children and 2 active dogs. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive in, I want to share a little bit of my own journey. For years, I was the woman that held everything together: career, marriage, parenting, every role that needed me. I poured myself into everyone else, believing that if I just loved harder, tried a little harder, stretched a little more, everything would fall into place. But somewhere along the way, I started disappearing inside my own life. I felt unseen, unheard, and unsure of who I was outside of what I did for others. And when the relationship that I was in began to shift, I found myself fighting for connection while losing pieces of myself. That's when I began this chapter of self-discovery. Not because I wanted to leave anything behind, but I needed to find myself again. I learned that love doesn't survive on effort alone. It needs truth, presence, honesty, and 2 people willing to grow together. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to fix everything and please everyone and start listening to your own soul. So today's conversation with Dr. Lee Baucom is personal for me. I know what it feels like to want to save something that seems like it's slipping away. I know the ache of hope and the weight of exhaustion. And I also know the beauty of reclaiming yourself, even in the middle of heartbreak. My hope today is that wherever you are, fighting for your marriage, questioning your relationship, or rediscovering your identity, you hear something that reminds you that you are not alone and your story is still unfolding. So without further ado, let's get started. Well, hello, welcome to Lovin Sheila. I'm so happy to have you here. I think your work and my passion for relationships has a good alignment. And I looked at a lot of your information, and one of the things I loved was when you said marriage matters, because though I'm divorced, I believe in marriage and I'm a proponent and advocate for healthy marriages. And so I loved when I saw that. And another thing, your system is moving marriages toward solutions rather than dissolution. And that makes me very excited to talk to you today and hear more about you. So welcome to the podcast, and let's get started. So one of the first things I want to ask you is just to kind of like lay a framework. What are your thoughts on traditional marriage therapy? Is that a loaded question?
Yeah, well, I think because you know that I have some concerns for that.
Yes.
So I often refer to myself as a recovering therapist. That was where I started, and I did my training, got a PhD in that. And as I was finishing that, well, I was questioning it for a while, but as I was finishing that, I realized there was this other way of being, which was coaching. This was back in the mid 90s when there weren't coaches on every corner. And so I realized that fit for me better. And here's why. So this is the analogy I often use. Let's say you go to a doctor and the doctor is like, you need to have this procedure. Now, 50% of the people who have this procedure die. And
Mm-hmm.
only 10 to 15% of the people who have the procedure say it helped at all. I mean, are you ready to sign up for that procedure, or would you be going, wait a minute, what is this you want me to do that I might not get anything from? That's the statistics on marital therapy. 50% of the couples who go to marital therapy still end up divorced, and only 10 to 15%, and that depends on the study that they did,
Mm-hmm.
said that it helped them at all.
Wow. That's alarming. That's alarming.
So here's the interesting thing about that. I give those statistics, and people are like, I had a good experience in therapy. And my response is that's an anecdote, right? Anecdotal evidence versus looking in a study. And so we're talking statistics versus a person. Are there great therapists out there? Yes.
Right.
Are there people who got help in therapy? Yes. Do the statistics back that? No. Just like that procedure I was recommending, some
Hmm.
people survived and 10 to 15% said actually that procedure helped. So yes, it can. It's just that the setup is tough when that is the first default for people when they have a marital problem.
So I guess that was what I was going to ask you too about the statistics of successful marriages after going into counseling. Because I did it, I did it a few times along the way, and you know,
Here you are.
yeah, here I am. Here I am. We were even like marriage therapy dropouts. I mean, we did a little dropout session too. But anyway,
Well, and
so
by the way, that's typical. I mean, so the reason is because at some point, a lot of people start the process very hopeful, and then they start seeing it imploding. I can talk some about why I think it's a problem, if that might be helpful for people to kind of
okay.
get a mindset. So there are three core pieces that I see. One's got a couple of circles to it, but there are three core pieces. The first one is preparation, not the people coming in, but the therapist.
Okay.
So when a state licensed somebody to be a therapist, that means they've done the training and the licensure to be a therapist, not a particular therapist. And so they can choose to see the populations they feel like they're qualified to do, which is fine, except for many times so there is a difference between individual therapy in a mindset and couples or family therapy in mindset of the therapist. My training was I did individual training and then I kind of focused in on couples and families, a systems approach. And so many people doing marital therapy actually are not trained as marital therapists. They are individual therapists, and I can always kind of suss that out by asking who's the client. And if they can't immediately say, the marriage is my client, we've got a problem. Because they'll go, well, the two people coming to my office are, and that's because of their individual approach, right? And when you have two people in your office, you're going to side with one. And that's not what you're there to do. You're there to deal with the relationship. That's a piece. Also, behind that orientation is that therapists are trained to be neutral in their thinking. They're not, but we're supposed to act that way.
Mhm.
And so let me just use another medical analogy. So I go into the doctor's office and my arm's hanging at this weird angle, and the doctor goes, "Yeah, that's broken. Now, did you want to fix that, or are you just okay with that?" That's not what I want from the doctor. I want the doctor to say, "Let's get that fixed and let's make it the best it can be." Right. So that's being on the side of the marriage in this piece, to be able to say, I am for the marriage. There are times when a marriage cannot survive, and if so, we need to still do the work of completing that.
Mhm.
But let's see what can is possible. If I go to marital therapy, I'm there for the marriage, and yet many therapists in their training aren't able to get there. So that's also the therapy. Another circle of that is that a default setting for marital therapy ends up being communication problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is not the problem. We can come back to that in a minute because I
Yeah.
think that deserves some more. Okay, so that's problem number one. Problem number two is the setup of that, where many times somebody is dragging their spouse to therapy.
Yes.
Dragging the spouse to therapy means that, and what they're hoping for is there's some magic thing that happens that the therapist convinces them to work on the marriage. And what really happens is the person who doesn't want to be there only in their mind keeps coming up with more and more clear reasons of why this can't work, why they don't want to be there. So they kind of end up verifying that.
Right.
So we end up with a more resistant situation. If both people want to be in therapy, they're the ones who end up in that 10 to 15%
Okay.
because they are both ready to step forward. And it doesn't matter what the therapist about. So the theoretical piece, the lack of the therapist, and the theoretical piece, I kind of molded in there with the therapist. But so we got a therapist not prepared, the theoretical background that's often muddled with communication theory and not understanding what the real heart of the matter is. And that's a big third piece of that, of not understanding that all the things that come into an office are usually symptoms of the underlying issue. So that's the third piece. And then the resistant spouse is the one that those three things working together are the ones that can keep a marriage therapy from working.
What made you decide to focus so heavily on saving the marriage?
Let's go with two pieces. One is from my childhood, and the other is kind of professional.
Mhm.
Childhood, I watched. My parents are still married in their 80s and still happily married. My grandparents were also married their entire lives and happy. But
Mhm.
I had an uncle that I think there were five or six divorces in there. We're not sure about one. I'm not sure if it was an actual marriage, but five or six. So, I mean, he sat none of us in our family need to get divorced to stay with the national average anymore. He said he did that, right? He said that took care of all of us. And then I had an aunt or two aunts that also had relationships that fell apart. And two of those, my uncles and one of my aunts, there were children involved. And it was devastating to watch in multiple layers. Their parents, my grandparents were devastated to watch it. My parents, the siblings, were devastated to watch it. My aunts and my uncle were also devastated to be in the midst of it. My cousins,
Yeah.
devastated by it. So we're talking three generations. I happen to know after doing this work that a lot of people who come from divorced families, it changes what they think about starting a family. That's
Mhm.
four generations of
Wow.
impact from a broken relationship. So that was, and looking back, is the reason that I kind of veered in that direction in my
Mhm.
professional training. But in my professional training, what I came to realize is there's a lot of misunderstanding about what's possible to do in a marriage. We get a lot of the if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It takes two to tango. It shouldn't be hard if it's right. All these myths that are there, and I wanted to find a way to say that's just not the case. There are ways forward.
Now, tell me this. How did you surmise that it can be done like with just one partner being willing in the beginning?
I mean, strangely, so the takes two to tango thing is the one, but strangely, isn't that the case in everything in life? Like, somebody decides that something's got to be different about their health, and
Okay.
the difference is that this is a partnership. But so many people realize this. Here we are, as we're talking, it's not far from the beginning of the year. Lots of people make their
Right.
resolutions, and that is one person saying, I want something to be different. Whether they're successful or not, we
Okay.
can leave that to the side. One person saying, I want something different, is the beginning point. And so that's true in a relationship. Let me back up a piece. I think this might be an important piece to put in, because then I think this kind of fits in here. I have a core belief of how marriages get into trouble,
Okay.
and that's that they hit the pause button.
Mm-hmm.
That's the spin out that happens. And so I'll explain that in a minute, but just to say that when a couple hits the pause button, at some point one of the people is going to realize earlier that there's a problem than the other. It's if both of them do it at the same time, again, easy. That's get that going easily. But usually it's one that realizes it first. The other has either already begun to think, out of the
Right.
marriage, and they're not even. They might. A lot of times, I'll have people say, "I didn't know my spouse even wanted to change anything. I thought we were both on board with this just falling apart." And so they're
Mhm.
shocked that one wants to work on things because they just kind of it eased out. The other is that they're still kind of in suspended animation, to go back to that pause button. They're still kind of sleeping and going, there's nothing wrong. It's just a phase. We'll
Mhm.
be fine. And so one person becomes aware that there's a crisis that they want to deal with. That's always the case in anything in life. One person goes, oh, this isn't right.
Mhm.
So that's the starting point. So would it be helpful to go back and explain that pause button?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I've spent a lot of time watching relationships and where they hit a problem, and so to backtrack, when I was in the office, I know now that I see people around the world, I don't have a clinical office, but back then, if you were getting married in one of seven places of faith in the city I lived in, you had to come to my office 3 times and get my signature if you were going to get married. So I was the premarital guy for 7 places. I saw a lot of couples, and all of them thought that they had beat the statistics before they got to my office. They
Mhm.
thought, which makes sense. I mean, not many people don't know the statistics on successful marriage. And it's not a mystery to people,
Mhm.
and yet they still are ready to sign up and let's do this. And
Right.
so they have to think that they are going to beat the statistics. And they usually think that they've got real love. These other people who failed, they didn't have real love. They've got real love. They're confident of that. And I'm not saying they don't have real love as much as that's not what carries
Yeah,
the game. That's not what
absolutely.
wins it. So I look back and I watch them. So they spend all of this energy forming a relationship. And that's a lot of energy when people are falling in love, and all of that energy, and they're all that focus on each other. And they go, you know what, let's spend the rest of our lives together. Let's get married. Okay. So they create that and they get married. And now life kind of comes back to normal because now you're in the same house. Some people are anyway,
Yeah.
but they're there. They've accomplished that. They've made the commitment. They were here for life, and so they often go, okay, now we got to do this life thing,
Yeah.
and that's the pause button.
Yes.
They think that they'll get back to us, like this is just a phase in life, right?
Yeah.
And they do it for legitimate reasons, like now we got to take care of the kids. Now I want to get to this place in my career. Now I want to, take this hobby or whatever, and so they all these things take their energy, and they go, it's okay, we've got this marriage, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. So they hit the pause button, going, we'll come back to us at some time in the future. It's these sci-fi movies, where they put the people in the pods to send them to Mars, and they go to sleep, and then they wake up at Mars and they just hit the button,
Yeah.
and they're awake and nothing's changed. And
Yeah.
that's not what a relationship does. A relationship's either growing and expanding, or it's shrinking and dying. And so you
Yeah.
hit the pause button and you have started the process of disconnection. That's the root of the problem that we see.
Yeah. I can see that because yeah, lives and we're working and we have children and we're buying houses and we're doing all these things and we what we bring to each other becomes very, very minimal. And one of the pauses I want to I think this kind of fits in here. I remember when I was newly married and we were both real passionate people and we used to clash like crazy. And so early on, I made a decision to like, we can't do this. Like, we can't keep butting heads this way. So I pretty much relented on a lot of things and I let him have his way. And we were married for over 20 years and it just eventually became insurmountable. I had
Resentment.
paused in my mind. I had stopped like communicating for myself or advocating for myself to where he was just like steamrolling me. And I thought I did it for the better of our relationship to help us get along. But in the end, honestly, it made sure that it tore us apart, is what I'm trying to say. And so I know that's not the same pause you're talking about, but that's
Well,
an experience.
let's get into that a little bit because I think that you brought up an interesting point. The pause button is what causes the problem. The opportunity is what people miss, and the opportunity is to form a we. And this will get to your conflict thing, right? A we is that not that you lose yourself to the relationship, which is kind of what you try to do of like, okay, I'll just let you have your way, and we'll be a team, but you weren't really showing up at that point.
Exactly.
That's what happens is you stop showing up. So if you're on the team together, and I say we, not like small, but
Mm-hmm.
we, W-E, right? Us together. We
Yeah.
are in this together. We're a team. And so how does a team best operate? When both people
Yeah.
show up, when all the teammates show up at their best to win the game,
Yes.
not to be the one who gets their way, but to win the game. So when you talk about, the butting heads, the butting heads wasn't the problem. It was what you wanted out of the butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
Each of you wanted to be right to win.
Yes. Yes.
There's a place to say, whenever you put two people together in that proximity, you've got to work some things out because you're not going to see eye to eye. And depending on your own personality, how strongly that comes out, but you're not going to see eye to eye. But if you have that we in focus, like if that's what you're
Mm-hmm.
headed for, then wherever you don't see eye to eye is an opportunity for growth
Yeah.
of moving together. And so I always talk about it's not a matter of no conflict, but that the conflict is in service of the relationship. It's
That's a great.
I don't know
That's a
who
great.
said it long ago. Somebody said you can either be right or you can be happy. You can't be both. And then the fights where I want to win, I'm trying to be right.
Right.
This is the fact that we can go, but what is important for us to work together?
Yes, that's very true. Frankly, I wish I had it to do all over again because I could, I could have shown up because, like I said, I let it get a little out of control, and then by then, anyway, I don't belabor that too much. But another thing I wanted to ask you, what would you tell couples whose major issues or the fish issues they feel they have come from the inability to get on the same page with their children and how they raise their children?
And using the model of what we just talked about of being a we, right? That's so there we always talk about there are these 5 areas that are trouble spots for couples. And people, when they come into my office, they say, oh, we don't get along about this. And they think that's the problem. So kids,
Mm-hmm.
kids is a big one, money, in-laws, religion, but now religion and politics, actually, and sex. Those are the big 5. But all of those are symptoms of whether you're working as a we or whether you are going at it as you versus me, right? So, kids, we have pretty clear evidence that if you are consistent in your parenting, whether you are more willing to let them do what they want or more strict, right? So, which side of that you're on, kids do fine with either of those if you are consistent about it. What they
Mm-hmm.
don't do well is if you're one day strict and another day real willing to allow them to have more room, right? And so that it's the up and down that they have problems with. They also, research shows, do fine if parents differ on that. As long as they're working as a team, and one of them's not having to act like the bad guy and the other's the good guy, right? And that's
Yeah.
what often happens in that. So, um, being a team, being a we, doesn't mean that you do the parenting exactly alike, but that you support each other in that and you understand the differences in how you see things. No 2 parents are ever going to see things the same with their kids nor act towards the kids. It's just not, it's never going to happen. And
Mhm.
so the question is, can we support each other in how we do it, how our natural piece is? Or am I constantly thinking, I'm right, you're wrong? That's the me versus you thinking. That thinking process is true, though, with those other 4 too. So money. I often have people saying, we can't get along about money. It's not about the money. It's how you view the money. Is it our resource or is it your resource
Yeah.
versus my resource? And the reality is that it's our resource. You subdivide it. So, in the kind of psychology of money, they talk about mental accounting. And mental
Mhm.
accounting is when you make divisions in something where there isn't actually division. My viewpoint is in a household, there are resources coming into the household and there are resources going out of the household. That anything you subdivide in there is your own mental accounting. And so when I have people coming in and they're fighting about money, they're fighting really about control.
Yeah.
Control is never about us. How can we use this resource to better our lives? That's a conversation point.
How do you get to we? I mean, I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out. I want to share something with you. I've been thinking about this. And I grew up in a single parent household. And, I feel like we were largely on my mom was on survival mode, making sure we had food and she paid the bills and we had shelter and all that. And she wasn't married. And so I don't think that we had like healthy relationships modeled and we definitely didn't communicate about finding a mate and building connection to the point where I really didn't hear connection, the word connection, until like the last 3 years. Like I never saw the connection. I had like physical relationships, I had trauma bonds or whatever, but I never had a real emotional connection. And I was married over 20 years. And so how do you get to we? I mean, I want to get married again. How do you
So
get there?
So two lanes that you just brought up. One is the connection piece. What is connection? Because you
Mhm.
can have connection even if it's not about being a we, right? That's a different
Okay.
thing. The we is a mindset.
Okay.
And so a lot of being a we is held in the minds of each of the people. There's research. This was interesting because I've been now. So when I first started talking about that, it was 28 years ago. That was when I was writing. And so 28 years ago, I started talking about being a we, right? And so about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, some research came out that showed that successful couples use plural pronouns more often than
Mm.
singular pronouns. And so they're like, oh, that's, so there it is. And I'm like, well, that's just proving what I've been saying. When you talk about us and our and we, when that is part of what you're saying, you're telling me how you're thinking, right? That's revealing it. When you're talking about I, you, me, you're revealing how you're thinking. And so part of what I look for with couples is, where is that thinking? If they're talking about our money, that's one thing. If they're talking about your money versus my money, that's a different. If they're talking about your family versus our family, when I married my wife, her family came along. I mean, they're now my family. My
Yeah.
family is her family. And so I could reference that to clarify things, but do I think that way? My brother-in-law, I think, is my brother. And that's because that's the reality of what I see in that process. We joined families.
Mhm.
So that's a we thinking. When we start thinking about our goals, what happens with us, I want to talk about what my piece of that is, like what's important to me, but I want to hear what my spouse is. So a lot of that is just in how you process it. So I talk about these three C's
Yeah.
of working on your relationship, of connecting, changing, and creating. Connecting with your spouse. We can talk about the three layers of connection if you want to, but connecting with your spouse because you've been disconnected. You hit the pause button and that's disconnection, right? Changing means that I've got to say, where do I need to grow?
Right.
When I say that, a lot of times people will go, oh, you think something's wrong with me? I don't even know. That's not my role. My role is to know this. People stagnate. That is what happens in adulthood. We stagnate if we're not careful. And so to ask the question, where have I stagnated? Where am I not showing up the way I truly want to show up? Maybe it's resentment. Maybe it's I just kind of am kicking back. Years ago, I had this guy who said, my wife says I've changed. Please tell her I haven't changed. And I said, if you haven't changed, I'm sorry, you've missed an opportunity, right? You should be changing. That's what humans are about, of growing. And Ray Kroc, who started McDonald's, says you're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. That's the only two choices. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, let's grow. Let's continue that process. That's the change piece. And changing means that you might also be changing how you think about connection and how you think about this other create. And it's creating a new path, and that's creating the path to seeing it as a we. Let's go down this road together as us as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the team mindset is helpful for a lot of people, just because if you're on a team, your goal is to win, not to take the other person down, not to be the most important person on the court, not to show your skills and belittle them, but to win the game. That's what teams do when they're working well, and that is often a good bridge point for people to think about we.
Okay. That sounds good. And do tell me about the three layers of connection. I do want to know more.
Yeah, so three layers. I'm going to name them and then go back to them: physical, emotional, and spiritual. So,
Okay.
physical is loving touch, not any touch, but loving touch, right? And so, usually when I say that, people are like, oh, you mean sex? Well, yes, but more than that, beyond that, it's cuddling, it's holding hands, it's patting each other on the back, it's whatever physical loving touch is. We do that, and so I said connection isn't only with our spouse. I do that with my kids. I hug my kids, right? I pat them on the back when they're having a hard time. I try to comfort them and always have. And with my friends, I tend to hug them and pat them on the back. And, when I'm at pickleball, even a little fist bump, that's physical connection, right?
Right.
And so all of these pieces, we share that with pretty much every warm-blooded creature. My dog's lying beside me and we don't talk, we don't share our last life story together, right? We don't do
Right.
those other two, but she sure likes it when she cuddles up against me and I scratch her, and that's physical connection. So that's connection, right? That's nonverbal. The next one up is emotional. And emotional happens really easy to see on two different levels. And that is that I get somebody, right? You get me. We don't have to talk about that. I get you. You get me. That's a feeling, right? So when my wife laughs at my jokes, she doesn't have to say, "Oh, you're a funny guy." You know, she laughs at my jokes. I'm like, "Oh, I guess she gets me, right? She gets my humor, and she gets what is important to me, what's not important to me, and that same for her. Now, it doesn't mean that we are on the same page about that, but we get each other, we understand each other at a core
Mhm.
level. That often is fairly nonverbal.
Mhm.
Then there is the supporting each other, and that is often nonverbal, but crosses over into the verbal, where maybe she's telling me about her hard day or her great day, or I'm telling her about my hard day or my great day, and we support each other in that. So we feel supported. We feel gotten and supported, right? That's core for that emotional piece. Spiritual one is the one that a lot of people don't realize until I point it out. So I say spiritual, and just like when I said physical, they say sex. I'm like, no, not just that, but
Mhm.
spiritual. Is it religious? Yes, but the part that is if people have a religious background, yes, having that, sharing that is important, but it's beyond that. It's
Mhm.
what's important to us. You know, what are our dreams, our hope, our expectations? What are our big fears? What do we want in life? And that is verbal. I mean, that is all verbal, and is where often couples fall in love. They have that conversation where they talk about their families and their goals and their hopes and their dreams and their fears and all that. And they often point to that as the moment they fall in love, and then they stop having that conversation.
Mm.
Um, those are the three areas. And when couples are hurting, one, two, or three can easily be missing. And so that almost creates bullseyes for them. Now you go, oh, that's what I need to be working on, those three levels.
Thank you for watching part one of our discussion with Dr. Lee. Don't forget to go to his website, savethemarriage.com. Savethemarriage.com. Subscribe to my page and also like, comment, and share. We want to hear from you. Let's get the word out. Let's share, let's comment, let's engage with this. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next Lovin Sheila.